The first thing my divorce lawyer said to me was not, "Please have a seat." It was not, "I'm sorry you're going through this." It was not even my name. She looked up from the intake form, heard me answer one harmless question about dates, and went completely still. Then she leaned across her polished walnut desk and whispered, "Do you ever think about that night?" I was 34 years old, sitting in a downtown Milwaukee law office with a folder full of bank statements, tax returns, and the quiet remains of an 11-year marriage. My name is Graham Whitaker. I manage overnight logistics for a regional grocery distributor, which sounds dull until you realize half the city's milk, bread, and strawberries arrive because people like me don't sleep when everyone else does. I was used to fluorescent lights at 3 a.m., tired drivers, broken pallets, and problems that could be solved with a phone call. I was not used to a woman in a charcoal suit staring at me like I had just walked out of a ghost story. Her nameplate read Sabrina Voss. She was younger than I expected for someone with her reputation. Maybe 33, maybe 34. Dark auburn hair pinned back in a way that looked professional until one loose strand softened everything. Green eyes, calm hands, the kind of voice that could make bad news sound survivable. Until it shook. "I'm sorry," I said. Sabrina blinked once, like she had forgotten the room had walls. "Your voice." I gave an awkward laugh. "That bad already?" "No." Her mouth moved like she almost smiled and thought better of it. "Not bad." She glanced down at my intake sheet. Her finger rested on the line where I had listed Lakefield University, class of 2013. Then she looked at the next line. Spouse, Bethany Whitaker. "Did your wife go to Lakefield too?" she asked. "Yes." I shifted in the chair. "We met junior year." Her expression changed at that. Not judgment. Something stranger. A door opening in the wrong house. I had chosen Sabrina because my coworker had called her ethical, efficient, and allergic to drama. I needed all three. Bethany and I had been separated for 7 months. No screaming, no affairs, no broken plates. Just two people who had slowly become experts at not reaching for each other. I expected paperwork. Instead, Sabrina folded both hands on my file and said very quietly, "Northbound." The air left my chest. No one had called me that in 11 years. Not because it was a nickname, it wasn't. It was worse. It was a confession I had buried under a mortgage, anniversaries, polite dinners with Bethany's parents, and a gold ring I still wore out of habit. Northbound was the name I gave a college radio host during the final overnight broadcast of WLKF Lakefield's student station. I had called at 1:17 in the morning because I couldn't sleep 2 weeks before my wedding. I told her I was afraid I was about to marry a good woman for the wrong reasons. She told me her on-air name was June. We talked until sunrise. Most of it wasn't on the air. After the last song, after the official goodbye, after the station was supposed to go dark, she kept me on the private line. We talked about fear, loyalty, bad timing, and the terrible kindness of people who love you almost enough. At 5:43 a.m., she said, "Meet me on the station steps. No promises. Just a face to go with the voice." I said yes. Then Bethany found me first, and I never met June. I stared at Sabrina Voss across that immaculate desk and felt 11 years compress into one breath. "How do you know that name?" I asked, though my pulse already knew. Sabrina's eyes shone, but she kept her posture perfect. "Because I was June." For a moment, the city outside her window went silent. Cars moved below us on Wisconsin Avenue, tiny and ordinary, while my life tilted hard enough to make me grip the arms of the chair. "You," I said. "That seems to be the problem." A laugh almost broke out of me, not because anything was funny, but because my body needed somewhere to put the shock. "I'd listened to you for 4 years." "I know." Her voice softened. "You told me that." I stopped. She arched one brow. "Careful." "That did it." I smiled despite the folder of divorce documents between us. I pictured someone with purple hair and combat boots. I had purple hair and combat boots. "Of course you did." The smile we shared was brief, dangerous, and too warm for a lawyer's office. Then Sabrina looked at my wedding ring. The warmth died, but not completely. It just went underground. She closed my file without opening it further. Graham, I can't represent you. I sat back. Because of a college radio call? Because I recognized you before receiving any substantive details, and because I am not going to pretend this is normal. She slid the folder toward me, still unopened. You need independent counsel. I'll have my assistant send you 3 names. One is particularly good if both parties are civil and there aren't custody issues. You're serious. I'm an attorney. It happens occasionally. That should have ended it. A clean line. A professional decision. The kind of adult boundary people claim they want until it cuts exactly where they're tender. But neither of us moved. On her desk beside a brass letter opener sat a small silver keychain shaped like a radio microphone. I looked at it too long, she noticed. You kept something from then, I said. Her fingers touched the keychain once. So did you. I knew she didn't mean an object. She stood, and I stood too because suddenly sitting felt too intimate. She came around the desk with my folder in both hands. Up close, she was not a memory or a voice in the dark. She was real. Freckle near her left cheekbone. Vanilla and coffee. Tired eyes that had learned how to win arguments without raising her voice. She handed me the documents. Our fingers brushed. It lasted half a second. It felt like an answer neither of us had earned yet. At the door, I turned back. That morning, don't. Her voice was gentle, but it stopped me cold. I nodded. Right, sorry. She opened the door to the hallway, then paused with her hand on the knob. The station clock ran 7 minutes fast, she said. I remember because I kept telling myself you weren't late yet. My throat tightened. Sabrina! She looked at me then, not like my lawyer, not like a stranger, like a woman who had been waiting on a set of stone steps for 11 years. I stayed until sunrise, she said. And when you didn't come out, I told myself Northbound had finally chosen a direction. Sabrina's assistant emailed me 3 names before I reached the parking garage. No note, no apology. Just a clean list of attorneys and phone numbers with one name in bold, Lena Ortiz. Efficient, ethical, allergic to drama. I sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes with the engine off, my divorce folder on the passenger seat, and my hands doing nothing useful. Then I searched for the old broadcast. I told myself it was curiosity, verification. Some adult need to confirm that my memory had not turned one sleepless night into a myth. The Lakefield University Library had digitized the student station archives 3 years earlier. I found it under a plain title, WLKF Final Overnight Broadcast, May 9th, 2013. The recording began with static, then a song I had forgotten knowing. Then her voice. Not Sabrina's courtroom voice, not exactly. June's voice. Lower from exhaustion, braver in the dark. She introduced songs like she was handing matches to people lost in separate rooms. At 1:17 a.m., my younger self came through the speakers. Hi, he said. I'm not giving my real name. June laughed softly. Then give me a weather pattern, a constellation, a highway direction. A pause. Northbound. I almost shut the laptop. My voice sounded younger but not unrecognizable. That was the cruel part. Same pauses. Same habit of answering hard questions like I was backing away from a ledge. On the recording, June kept me on air for only 8 minutes. Northbound is getting married soon, she told the listeners. He is discovering that love and certainty are not the same species. I remembered blushing alone in my rented room. The public portion ended with me saying, "What if staying is just cowardice with better manners?" June replied, "Then leaving can be cowardice with better shoes. Don't romanticize motion." Then she put on an old folk song, and the archive skipped ahead to the official sign-off at 3:02. None of the rest was there. Not my admission that Bethany's goodness made my doubts feel criminal. Not June telling me she was terrified she would spend her life being almost chosen. Not the long silence at 5:30 when neither of us wanted to hang up. Not the invitation. No evidence except my body remembering. 3 days later, after my first meeting with Lena Ortiz, Sabrina called. I confirmed you retained other counsel, she said. I did. Good. Then this is not about your case. The word case sounded ridiculous between us. There's an open house at the old campus station tomorrow night, she said. Community radio bought the license. They let alumni wander around once a year and feel ancient. You want me to come? I want to know if the person I remember exists outside a phone line. A beat. And I want you to have the same chance. So I drove to Lakefield. The campus looked smaller than it had when I was 23 and full of dread. The station occupied the basement of Harrow Hall, down a stairwell that smelled of dust, rain, and vending machine sugar. A gray-haired man in headphones stood near a folding table of donated cookies, adjusting cables with the grim focus of a surgeon. Don't touch the board, he said as I entered. I wasn't planning to. Nobody plans to. They see sliders and become animals. Sabrina appeared behind him, smiling. Graham, this is Milt Rowan. He kept WLKF alive longer than the university wanted. Milt squinted at me. You alumni? Something like that. Dangerous answer. He pointed down the hall. Studio B is open, no drinks near the equipment. Dead air is a sin, but spilled coffee is a felony. Sabrina led me into a dim booth lined with faded acoustic foam. 2 microphones faced each other across a small console. Above the door hung the same clock I remembered from my mind's worst museum. 7 minutes fast. She saw me notice. They never fixed it, she said. Maybe it thinks we're all late. She laughed, and the sound settled. Something in me I had not known was still braced. For a while we did the easy things. Full names, jobs, cities, her mother's family from Door County, my father's hardware store in Kenosha. She told me she became a family lawyer because people told the truth at the end of things, even when they lied about everything else. I told her logistics suited me because trucks either arrived or they didn't. That is the saddest endorsement of a career I've ever heard, she said. You say that like divorce law is a carnival. At least there are dramatic monologues. We sat in the 2 old swivel chairs, not touching, too aware of not touching. Finally, she said, What did you remember most? The part where you asked what I wanted if nobody would be hurt by it. What did you say? That I wanted to be known without being managed. Her face changed. I remembered that, she said. I wrote it down after you disappeared. I looked at her. What did you remember most? That you asked me whether a voice could be a place? And what did you say? I said yes. She swallowed. Then I waited on the steps to prove myself wrong. The old booth seemed to shrink around us. She was close enough that I could see the tiny lines beside her eyes. 11 years had happened to both of us. I wanted, absurdly, to thank time for what it had done to her face. Sabrina leaned forward first, or maybe I did. The space between us thinned to breath. Then she whispered, Why didn't you come outside? My phone buzzed before I could answer. Once, then again. I ignored it. Sabrina didn't. You should check. It can wait. If it's your wife, it probably shouldn't. The word wife struck the room like a dropped glass. I looked. Bethany had sent one message. I know you met Sabrina Voss, or June, if that is still what you call her. I heard the broadcast too, Graham. I heard you that night. I have been waiting 11 years for you to admit what it meant. Below it came a second message. We need to talk about the red umbrella. Bethany asked me to meet her at the townhouse on Sunday afternoon. Not our townhouse. The townhouse. That was how she had started referring to it after she moved into the short-term rental near her office. Neutral language had become one of the last courtesies between us. The place looked staged when I arrived. Half the books gone, her blue ceramic bowls missing from the kitchen shelves, the wedding photo still on the mantel because neither of us had been brave enough to take it down. Bethany stood by the window with a mug of tea. She wasn't drinking. She had always been precise when she was hurt. No slam doors, no insults, just clean sentences that could take skin off. You went to the station, she said. Yes, with her. I didn't answer quickly enough. Bethany nodded. That's answer enough. It wasn't planned like that. No, it never is with you. And then she exhaled and shook her head. That sounded cruel. I don't want to do cruel. I set my keys on the counter. Tell me about the umbrella. She looked out at the row of bare little trees along the curb. I couldn't sleep that night either, she said. 2 weeks before the wedding, you said you were going for a walk. I knew your walks. You came back clearer after them. But that night you didn't come back. I remembered the payphone outside my apartment building. Rain ticking against the glass. My own reflection looking like a man waiting for a verdict. I turned on the radio, she continued. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. That station was always on in your room. My stomach tightened. And there you were, she said, calling yourself northbound like a man in a song. Bethany, I heard enough, not everything. Just enough to understand that my fiancé was asking a stranger whether marrying me was courage or surrender. There was no defense. There are sentences that deserve only silence. She turned from the window. So I went. To Harrow Hall. Yes, I had the red umbrella because it was raining harder by then. I crossed campus and stood near the station entrance. I saw you through the glass before you saw me. The red umbrella. Sabrina's memory on the steps. A bright shape moving through gray morning. You came outside, Bethany said. But not to her. To me. In my memory, it had always been Bethany appearing first. Bethany crying, Bethany asking me to come home. I had let that version make me passive, as if the choice had happened to me. But standing in our emptied kitchen, I remembered the part I had edited out. Sabrina, June, waiting somewhere below the steps. Bethany asking, do you want our wedding? And me saying yes. Not because she trapped me, because I chose the life already holding my name. I didn't make you marry me, Bethany said, as if she could hear the memory forming. I asked you to choose before you met her. That's different. I know. Do you? I took off my coat slowly. I think I avoided knowing. Her mouth softened, which was almost worse than anger. I loved you, she said. I think you loved me too. I did. But part of you used that night like a locked room. Whenever we were unhappy, I could feel you standing outside it. I looked at the wedding photo. 2 young people smiling like witnesses for the prosecution. I'm sorry, I said. I don't need you to be sorry for wanting something else before we married. I need you to stop pretending our marriage failed because of a woman on the radio. It didn't. No. Bethany set the untouched tea in the sink. It failed because we stopped asking each other honest questions, because I wanted stability so badly I accepted your quiet, because you were grateful for my goodness and mistook gratitude for intimacy, because we became polite roommates with joint insurance. Every word landed because every word was fair. Then she surprised me. We could try counseling, she said. One real attempt. Not because I'm desperate, because 11 years should not be disposed of like expired milk. For a moment I saw it. The respectable path, weekly appointments, careful effort, telling everyone we were working on things, maybe even meaning it. But I also saw Bethany waiting another year for me to become fully present in a house where I had spent years being decent instead of true. I can't ask you to keep investing in my almost, I said. Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. Is that because of her? No. I forced myself not to look away. It has to be no. If Sabrina vanished tomorrow, I would still believe we're done. Bethany studied me for a long time. Then she nodded once. Good. That is the first clean thing you've said. Before I left, I slid my wedding ring off and placed it beside the photo. My finger looked pale and unfinished. In the car, I called Lena Ortiz. Proceed, I told her, and Sabrina Voss is not part of the petition, the discussion, or any explanation. This marriage ended inside the marriage. Lena was quiet for half a second. That is both legally irrelevant and emotionally healthier than most things I hear before lunch. Can you work with it? I can work with adults whenever they wander into my practice by mistake. That evening, I called Sabrina from my apartment. I told her everything. Bethany hearing the broadcast, the red umbrella, the fact that I had seen my fiancé and chosen her. Not weakly, not accidentally. Chosen. Sabrina listened without interrupting. When I finished, the line held only breath. So I wasn't just abandoned, she said. No, you chose someone else. Yes. That is not as comforting as you might think. I know. She arrived at my apartment 20 minutes later, no warning, no makeup beyond whatever the day had left her. She stood in my doorway, furious and beautiful. "I spent 11 years thinking you ran," she said. "I let myself think that too." "But you stayed." Her voice broke on the word. "You actually stayed. With the wrong kind of honesty." "With some kind of honor," she said, angry at the concession. Then she stepped forward and kissed me. It was not the kiss from a memory. It was warmer, clumsier, adult. Her hands caught my shirt like she needed proof I had weight. I kissed her back for 3 seconds too long before she pulled away. "No," she whispered. I froze. She touched my bare ring finger. "Do not make me the reason you leave. Do not make this kiss evidence." "It isn't." "Then prove that by finishing what you started without using me as your north." At the door, she looked back once. "I want you," she said. "That is the problem. I also want to trust the man who wants me." Then she left me standing in the hallway, finally understanding that being chosen only mattered if nobody was hiding inside the choice. The divorce took 4 months. That sounds too simple for the dismantling of 11 years, but most of the pain had already done its work before anyone filed anything. Lena Ortiz handled the legal pieces with brisk mercy. Bethany and I divided furniture, retirement accounts, kitchen knives, and the small embarrassments of a shared life. She kept the blue bowls. I kept the scratched dining table my father had helped us move in. At the final hearing, Bethany wore a navy coat and the pearl earrings her mother had given her for our wedding rehearsal. Afterward, we stood outside the courthouse in cold sunlight, no longer married and not quite strangers. "I hope she is real in daylight," Bethany said. I knew who she meant. "So do I." Bethany adjusted one glove finger. "For what it's worth, I hope you are too." Then she walked away without looking back, and I loved her best in that moment for not turning our ending into a performance. Sabrina and I had not kissed again. We had spoken carefully. Coffee twice, dinner once in a loud restaurant where neither of us knew what to do with candlelight. She asked about the hearing afterward, and I told her only that it was finished. She closed her eyes when I said it. A week later, she texted me an address and a time. "WLKF needs overnight volunteers for the winter pledge drive, midnight to 6. Milt says I am allowed one guest if he doesn't touch the board. Then, after a full minute, come if you want to know whether we were only good in the dark." I arrived at 11:52 with 2 coffees and a bag of gas station donuts because I had panicked and bought the least romantic food available. Milt met me in the hall wearing the same headphones, though no music was playing. "Coffee?" he asked. "For Sabrina." He took one anyway. Levels are set. Playlist is loaded. Read the pledge card every 20 minutes. No whispering into hot mics. People think radio is private because they can't see the audience. It is not. Then he pointed at me. "And you." Hands visible. "Yes, sir." Sabrina laughed from inside Studio B. She wore jeans, a black sweater, and no armor I recognized. Her hair was loose. The sight of it made me forget every sensible thing I had planned to say. For the first hour, we behaved. She sat at one microphone, I sat at the other. We read donor names. We thanked listeners in towns I had driven through at night. We played old records from the station library and took calls from insomniacs, nurses, truckers, and one man who requested a song for his iguana. At 2:40, during a long instrumental track, Sabrina turned down our microphones and leaned back. "You are disappointingly competent on air," she said. "I had a good teacher." "You had a reckless teacher. June would have let you talk until the transmitter caught fire." "And Sabrina?" "Sabrina checks the insurance policy first." I smiled. "I like both." That unsettled her. I saw it pass across her face. The fear that liking both versions meant I still preferred the one who existed without grocery lists, bad moods, or court calendars. At 3:17, the exact hour no human being should be asked to tell the truth, she shut off the studio monitors. Silence filled the booth in a way music never could. "We could do it," she said. "Do what?" "One night." Her fingers rested beside the dead microphone. No case, no marriage, no one waiting with an umbrella, just us, finally in the room we imagined. My pulse changed. Sabrina, I'm not being noble. She looked straight at me. I want you. I have wanted you since before I knew your name, which is embarrassing and probably unhealthy, but there it is. I tried to speak, but she raised a hand. Let me finish. We could have tonight. No promises in the morning, no attempt to drag something rare into errands and bills, and deciding whose turn it is to clean the bathroom. That's what you think a relationship with me is? That is what relationships are eventually. Ordinary, repetitive, full of small disappointments. Her smile trembled. The night we had was perfect because it ended before we could ruin it. We didn't have a night. We had a phone call and 11 years of imagination. And maybe that is safer. She stood and crossed to the old shelf where vinyl records leaned in dusty rows. A slow song began from the overnight playlist in the outer room, faint through the glass. Sabrina held out her hand. It was a bad idea to take it. I took it. We danced in the silent studio between the two microphones, surrounded by sleeping equipment and old foam walls that had heard thousands of confessions and kept none of them. Her cheek hovered near mine. Her hand was warm at the back of my neck. For a few minutes, I let myself want the easy version. No future. No risk of learning how she argued when tired. No chance she would discover my habits were not charming, that I stacked mail in bad piles, that I went quiet when ashamed, that I sometimes mistook endurance for love. Just one perfect night placed like glass over the old one. She lifted her face. I could have kissed her. I could have said yes. I could have become northbound again, always moving, never arriving. Instead, I stepped back. Her hand fell slowly. I can't, I said. Pain flashed across her face before pride covered it. Because you don't want me? Because I do. My voice sounded rough in the dead studio. I want you at noon. I want you annoyed in traffic. I want you when you have a headache and hate everyone. I want the version of you who forgets to buy milk and wins arguments unfairly and has to apologize later. That is not romantic. It is to me. She looked away. I continued because stopping would have been easier and therefore wrong. I won't be your secret, Sabrina, or your souvenir. And I won't take the one night I imagined if it costs me the woman standing here. Her eyes filled. If I say I can only offer tonight, she asked, then tonight is where I leave. The station clock read 5:12, which meant it was really 5:05. Not sunrise yet, not close enough to make an elegant exit. Good. I was done obeying old staging. I picked up my coat. At the door, she whispered, northbound. I turned. She was crying now, silently. My name is Graham, I said gently. Then I walked out before dawn with no promise she would ever use it again. I went home and made breakfast for one. That sounds heroic only if you have never tried to crack eggs while your hands are shaking. I burned the toast, undercooked the first omelet, and stood in my kitchen at 6:11 a.m. feeling like a man who had walked out of a dream and into a room that needed sweeping, which honestly was the point. I did not drive back to the station steps. I did not text Sabrina something dramatic. I did not wait beside my phone pretending not to wait. I cleaned the skillet. I opened the blinds. I let daylight make no promises. At 8:03, someone knocked. When I opened the door, Sabrina stood there with a paper grocery bag against her hip. Her hair was windblown. Her eyes were swollen like she had cried, and then gotten angry at herself for crying. I brought pancake mix, she said. I looked past her, half expecting some sign from the universe. There was only my apartment hallway, a scuffed baseboard, and Mrs. Hamada from 3B dragging a laundry basket toward the elevator. You hate pancakes? Sabrina asked. No, I just wasn't sure you knew where I lived. I'm a lawyer, we find things. I stepped aside. She came in and set the bag on my counter. Pancake mix, blueberries, butter, oranges, coffee beans, and one ridiculous little bottle of real maple syrup. I almost stayed, she said without looking at me. At the station. I almost turned the whole thing into a beautiful injury and blamed you for surviving it. I said nothing. She took off her coat and folded it over a chair with extreme care, like she needed one task she could complete perfectly. June was easy, she said. June could be wise for 6 hours and vanish before anyone learned she was impatient, vain about her hair, bad at returning library books, and terrified of becoming ordinary. I'd like to meet that woman. You may regret it. I'm counting on regretting things occasionally. That made her laugh, and the laugh broke something open. She faced me then. My name is Sabrina May Voss. I grew up in Sturgeon Bay. I cannot sleep with closet doors open. I pretend to like jazz more than I do. I am excellent in emergencies and terrible with unstructured Sundays. I want children only if I have a partner who wants the daily work, not the Christmas card idea. I will ask too many questions when I'm scared. I will probably try to cross-examine you during fights. I felt my throat tighten. My name is Graham Whitaker, I said. I leave socks near the hamper instead of in it, which is apparently different. I go quiet when I feel guilty. I need work to call me in the middle of the night less than I claim I do. I loved my ex-wife badly, but not falsely. I am not looking for a voice in the dark anymore. Sabrina's mouth trembled. What are you looking for? A first date, I said. A real one. With your full name, and if it goes well, another. And if that goes well, a relationship visible enough to disappoint us, and strong enough to survive it. She walked over and kissed me in the middle of my ordinary kitchen. No microphone, no station clock, no rain, no red umbrella. Just morning light and the smell of scorched toast. We burned the first batch of pancakes because neither of us remembered to watch the pan. They were awful. We ate them anyway. 6 months later, we hosted friends around that scratched dining table I had kept from the townhouse. Sabrina had moved in 3 weeks earlier after a careful, unromantic negotiation about closet space, rent, and whether my habit of stacking mail in temporary piles was a symptom or a crime. She still cross-examined me when she was scared. I still went quiet sometimes. But now, when I disappeared behind myself, she would tap the table and say, "Name the room you're in." And I would. Bethany came by once to drop off a box of old photographs she had found in storage. She and Sabrina met briefly in the doorway. There was no movie scene confrontation, just two women measuring the truth of each other and deciding not to make it smaller. Bethany looked at me before she left. "You seem present," she said. "I'm trying." "Good." Then she smiled, not sadly exactly, and walked away into the life that no longer had to orbit mine. A year after that night at the station, Milt Rowan bullied Sabrina into recording a fundraiser message for the community radio drive. She bullied me into going with her. "Hands visible," Milt warned when we entered Studio B. "I'm practically a professional now," I said. "That's what amateurs say before they break faders." The old clock still ran 7 minutes fast. Sabrina and I sat across from each other at the microphones. She read the station copy beautifully, warm and clear. Then she looked at me and nodded. I leaned toward the mic. "This place once gave two strangers a place to tell the truth before they were brave enough to live it," I said. "If a voice on the radio ever kept you company, consider keeping this station alive." Milt gave us a thumbs up through the glass, then dragged one finger across his throat. "Cut it." Sabrina switched off her microphone. I switched off mine. For a moment, we sat in the silence where everything had begun. I thought maybe I would feel haunted. Instead, I felt grateful and ready to leave. Sabrina reached for my hand. "Home?" she asked. "Home," I said. And this time, before midnight, before sunrise, before the past could ask us to perform for it, we walked out of the booth together and returned to the life waiting with dishes in the sink, laundry on the chair, and tomorrow's coffee already measured. So tell me, if your divorce lawyer recognized your voice from the night you failed to meet her at sunrise, what would you have done? Would you chase the protected memory or risk wanting her in daylight? Have you ever been recognized by someone you thought you had lost? Tell me your story in the comments, and if this one stayed with you, please like and subscribe.